Good morning. Good morning. We're all in our places with sunshiny faces. Welcome again to another installment of Allow Me to Introduce an Insider's Guide to the Occult by yours truly, Lon Milo DuQuette, published by Wiser Books. Today I'm going to read my foreword to the 2000 edition of Dr. Art Rosengarten's Tarot and Psychology, Spectrums of Possibility. Art and I first met years ago, probably 1990 something maybe, in Chicago, where we were both speaking at the International Tarot Congress that was organized by Miss Janet Barris. A wonderful event. I wish we'd be able to have another one of those, hopefully someday in the future. But anyway, the convention was at a hotel, and she had booked the presenters, doubling them up in rooms together to share rooms, and Art was my designated roommate. Well, as luck would have it, my distributor, New Leaf Distributing, that distributed most of the occult material in the United States, North America at the time, had a very big multi-room suite set aside, and they only had that about half filled. So instead of rooming in the room that I was assigned, I shared a room in the New Leaf Distributing suite. Well, to make a long story short, I didn't end up meeting Art until we were both sitting out on the steps of the hotel waiting for a cab to take us back to the airport after the event. And we got to talking and realized that we only lived about 60 miles away from each other. And we had a wonderful lifelong friendship now. And well, anyway, Art wrote a very scholarly work called Tarot and Psychology. And when it was ready for publication, it was published by Paragon House. He asked me to write the foreword. And I started off with a couple of epigrams, one from Sigmund Freud. Promise me never to abandon the sexual theory. That is the most essential thing of all. You see, we must make a dogma of it, an unshakable bulwark against the black tide of mud, occultism. And that was a letter that Freud wrote to Jung in 1913. And this is Jung's reply back. I knew that I would never be able to accept such an attitude. What Freud seemed to mean by, quote, occultism was virtually everything that philosophy and religion, including the rising contemporary science of parapsychology, had learned about the psyche. For at least 5 centuries, tarot has tenaciously survived the condemnation of the church, the persecution of state, and the ridicule of academia. Long the instrument of fortune tellers and persons of dubious, if not felonious character, tarot enters a new millennium still in the guise of a fallen angel. However, unlike Milton's rebellious protagonist, the tarot now hovers dangerously close to redemption. I'm pleased, but not at all surprised, to learn that these ancient and evocative images are now attracting the serious attention of modern mental health experts. Foremost among these is Arthur Rosengarten, PhD, whose provocative and thoroughly readable work is the subject of these brief words. Since the mid-19th century, adepts of Western Hermeticism have attempted to demonstrate that the tarot is constructed in strict conformity with the fundamental principles of Hebrew mysticism known as Kabbalah. They asserted that images of the tarot, especially those displayed on the 22 trump cards, are visual personifications of various aspects of deity, which had been categorized with anal retentive zeal by unnamed Hebrew sages at some time in the distant past. The ancient Hebrew philosophers built upon the scriptural premise that man was created in the image of God. Later esotericists, observing the phenomena of repeating patterns in nature and remembering the Hermetic axiom as above, so below, tended to agree, albeit with less parochial bias. They reasoned that if the images of the tarot were metaphors of aspects of divine consciousness, then it followed that they must be reflected in the human level as key components of the psyche, archetypal citizens of the mind, with each of us in the mind which each of us share with our fellows. While I do not presume to speak with any measure of authority on matters relating to the field of psychology, I do feel somewhat qualified to speak on matters touching on Kabbalah and tarot. It's clear to me that the mystical concept of the archetypal images of tarot is identical in essence with those of Jungian's universal collective unconscious. Moreover, I firmly believe that under certain circumstances, the images of the tarot can trigger, activate, subdue, direct, or empower the specific dynamics these archetypes represent. Regrettably, few professionals are aware of the practical potential of the tarot. Fewer still are as yet willing to risk condemnation of colleagues and embarking upon a course of study that would enable them to skillfully employ this tool in a therapeutic environment. As a master of both disciplines, Dr. Rosengarten remains somewhat immune to such concerns. He's a pioneer in the purest sense of the word. Not only has he courageously ventured into uncharted territory, he has lingered along the way to break ground and erect landmarks for the benefit of those who will inevitably follow. Ironically, the antagonism, real or imagined, that exists between tarot and psychology parallels in many respects the fundamental differences between the Eastern and Western mysticism. The Eastern mystic, by tradition and perhaps because of temperament, is taught to quietly plunge inwardly to meet the myriad facets of self on their own turf. Furthermore, to overcome the distractions of mind which hinder this inner self-communion, he or she strives with ruthless meditative fervor to virtually assassinate the harpies of thought, creating, as it were, a vacuum into which pure illumination will theoretically pour. The Western mind, on the other hand, prefers to deal objectively with subjective matters. We want to reach in, personify them, pull them out, throw them down in front of us, and have it out with them then and there. But dealing objectively with internal realities is impossible if one is unable to recognize and engage them as such. What more perfect tool could one ask than a deck of colorful archetypal images that can be manipulated at will in nearly infinite combination. As the author points out, quote, in a typical 10-card spread, the chances of reproducing an exact duplication are simply staggering. When one calculates the probability from a deck of 78 highly differentiated cards. But with tarot, a transpersonal commonality is equally brought to bear upon human individuality and difference. This, perhaps, is why tarot's light shines through all quadrants of the psychological universe and may be applicable in varying degrees to diverse theoretical persuasions. The symbolic language of tarot compacts multiple levels of meaning into each card illustration, and synchronistically, one soon learns that there are no accidents in tarot or life. Or put differently, accidents themselves are inherently meaningful. Universal themes of human experience unfold within original permutation of the tarot matrix, reflecting countless variation on common myths such as the perennial stages of human suffering and attainment, the psychological tasks and demand of human development, and the mysteries and potential of the human spirit. Unquote. Rosengarten's landmark work spans the abyss that yawns between psychology and mysticism. Remarkably, it does so without diminishment to either art or science. Indeed, both are immeasurably enriched by his unique contributions. It's obvious that this is a work written primarily for the continuing education of mental health professionals. Certainly its meticulous notes, exhaustive references, bibliography, and heroic index set it apart from nearly every book on tarot ever published. Nevertheless, we of the tarot metaphysical community should welcome it with particular gratitude and interest, for it offers us a rare and entirely new look at an ancient tradition. And that's it for that chapter. Tomorrow, I'm going to read something really unique as far as my introductions go. Back in 1998, I was asked by the musicians, the New Age musicians and recording artists, David and Richard Gordon. You probably have at least one of their ambient albums in your collection. They were getting ready to release a record called Music of the Tarot, and they asked me to write the liner notes for that recording. So that's what we'll read tomorrow, my liner notes for the Music of the Tarot. And until then, be careful. Things are really hairy out there, especially here in California and in Texas and in Florida. Please don't let your guard down. Be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Bye-bye.